Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Jennifer Surtees, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Alison Huber. We warmly welcome the family of Gunner Kevin George Dolahenty, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland. We would also like to take a moment to consider and pay respect to the many professional and volunteer firefighters who are out in the thick of the bushfires, working in the most challenging and dangerous of conditions to keep people, places and communities safe. We thank you for your commitment and service which reflects the essence of the Australian spirit, a spirit that we also showcase here in the stories at the Australian War Memorial. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story of just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who gave their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. Following the reading of his story, the family of Gunner Kevin George Dolahenty and other visitors will lay wreaths at the photograph of his headstone.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Gunner Kevin George Dolahenty. Kevin George Dolahenty was born on the 11th of August 1910, the younger son of Michael and Sarah Dolahenty of the Sydney suburb of Granville. He attended the Sisters of St Joseph's School in Penrith and later the Marist Brothers College in Parramatta. Excelling on the sporting field, he won cups and trophies for success in tennis and cricket. He particularly loved cricket, especially fielding, and the Marist Brothers School at Parramatta now has an award named in his honour, given to the best fielder in their first 11 cricket side each year. After school, Dolahenty continued to play cricket for the Marist Old Boys Club and worked as a porter. Kevin Dolahenty enlisted into the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 24th of April 1941 at Paddington in Sydney. He was not the first of the Dolahenty children to serve in the Australian Armed Forces. His brother James, over 10 years Kevin Sr., had served on the Western Front in the First World War. After enlisting and training, Kevin Dolahenty joined the 65th Battery of the 2nd 15th Australian Field Regiment. Dolahenty served with his artillery unit in Malaya and Singapore as it prepared defences for a likely Japanese invasion. Throughout late 1941, they trained in the hot and humid jungle conditions of Southeast Asia and got used to firing their newly arrived 25-pounder guns. On the 5th of December 1941, they moved south from Singapore to the Kluang rubber estate in the south of the Malaya Peninsula to relieve the 2nd 10th Field Regiment, which had been providing artillery support for the Australian 8th Division's 22nd Brigade. It was while the 2nd 15th was in the process of transferring north that Japan declared war on the United States of America, Great Britain and consequently Australia. Throughout December 1941 and January 1942, Japanese forces advanced rapidly southwards throughout Thailand and Malaya. On the 5th of January, Dolahenty and the 2nd 15th moved north from Kluang to reinforce Allied troops attempting to block the Japanese advance on Johor. The 65th Battery, of which Dolahenty was part, went on to Muar on the west coast of Malaya to support the 45th Indian Brigade and was in position by the 13th of January. From this time on, Dolahenty and his unit faced almost constant battle as powerful Japanese forces rapidly advanced southwards towards Singapore. When providing support for Indian and Australian troops retreating from Wah to Parat Sulong, Dolahenty's 65th Battery alone fired nearly 7,000 rounds in a matter of days. They also suffered heavy casualties. By the time they reached Yongpeng, 24 of the 98 troops were injured. By the end of January, the 2nd 15th Field Regiment had reached Singapore and, along with other Allied troops, began preparing for the coming Japanese onslaught. Dolahenty and the 2nd 15th Field Regiment were on the west of Singapore, providing support for the 22nd Brigade when on the 8th of February, the Japanese began their assault on Singapore. The outnumbered Australian troops were able to inflict heavy casualties on the attackers, and on the 8th and 9th of February, the 2nd 15th Field Regiment alone fired nearly 5,000 rounds. They were, however, soon overwhelmed. Dolahenty was killed in the chaos and confusion of the fighting over the next few days as Australian troops retreated in the face of the Japanese attack. During the chaotic nature of the fighting, the fate of many thousands of Australians was not known, and many families faced an agonising wait for years, not knowing if their loved ones had been killed or taken prisoner. Dolahenty was originally reported missing, and it was not until 1946 that he was officially presumed to have died on the 11th of February 1942. He was 31 years old and was survived by his mother and father, 2 brothers and 5 sisters. He is buried in the Kranji War Cemetery in Singapore, where more than 3,700 Commonwealth soldiers of the Second World War now lie. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed here today in Anzac Hall. This is one but many of the stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Gunner Kevin George Dolahenty, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand and remove hats for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We'll leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.